Greetings, everybody. It's Blair Johnson with the Badass Records podcast. Welcoming you to another installment of the show. New episodes drop Thursday mornings. Audio can be found wherever you stream your music and your podcasts. Videos on YouTube, and all of those goodies are embedded in the site badassrecordspodcast.com. If you or someone you know is interested in joining me for an episode or would be a good candidate, hit me up at badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com and keep tabs on the program via the socials, Twitter and Instagram. Last but not least, if you feel inclined to support the show, make sure you check out the merch tab on the website. Get yourself a hoodie, a coffee mug, a baseball cap, a sticker, whatever floats your boat. That's all I got for you today. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show. I love your name, by the way. Like, it's got a great cadence to it.
Are we doing the thing right now?
We can be. We can be. You can wear headphones if you want. Absolutely don't need to, but they're there if you want them. Jackie Myers. It's just got, and then situationally, like things were getting a little out of hand the other night. I almost had to give him the old Jackie Myers. Sorry.
That name Myers it's a family name, but
okay.
It's my mother's side.
Interesting.
So for like a lot, like the first couple years of my childhood, my mother retained Myers, but then it got complicated. She just didn't want to answer questions with teachers and school systems and like judgmental parents, so she changed it to my father's last name.
Okay.
And then years later, my grandpa and I were like very close.
On her dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was like a hero for me when I was young.
Cool.
And like very like mythical, like I thought he owned a castle in Ireland kind of stuff. And he would tell me like stories like that.
Sure.
And so when I was an adult, my dad called and he was like, whatever you do. It was like his one piece of advice. He was like, don't use your last name. No one will ever remember it. I've been working in my field for like 30 years and no one has ever pronounced or remembered my last name. And I was like, all right, well, there's another one. So I went with Myers, and then I legally changed it at some point. And with the family's blessing, I like called both sides and I was like, hey, this feels like correct. I really like wanted to honor my grandfather. It is
cool.
A family name. It seems so arbitrary that just like the male name gets chosen every time. And so I was just like, well, I think I'm going to carry on Myers. And it kind of like, my mom was so hesitant to change Myers because she was so proud of it that it sort of like turned that full circle, and she took some pride in me taking back the name. Yeah.
I found out deep into, we were engaged for like a year and a half, but a ways into that, and whatever, dated for like 2.5, 3 years prior. But when we were in full planning mode, and we were at lunch in Zona Rosa, and she was like, I don't know how it came up even, but she was like, I'm keeping my name. I'm like still like partially upset about it. Like, but that day I was like, I felt bad for our server because it was awkward. Like,
really?
Just very palpable, awkward. And have been divorced for a while now, so she didn't have to change it either time. But it's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's a thing. My wife took my last name.
Really?
Yeah.
So Myers for her as well.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. That's a cool story though.
We're really proud of it, and my mom's side of the family is like very proud. My dad was just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It had everybody's blessing.
Interesting that he had that experience and said, whatever you do, don't roll with this.
Well, and it's cool because like you're not it's not a pride thing for him. He was thinking about me. He was
Yeah.
thinking about like
Very
the
cool.
whole story and my mom and her side of the family and everything.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I think this would be episode 119 of Badass Records podcast, hanging with Jackie Myers. So siblings.
Got one.
One.
Yep.
And how did mom and dad meet?
Oh gosh, they met at their first job.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Young then, I would guess.
Yeah, they're right out of college.
Okay. Very cool. So
probably not their first job, but it was their first like professional. I'm sure they were doing things in high school.
Okay, gotcha. So Jackie Myers Music on Facebook and Bandcamp and Instagram, and then JackieMyersMusic.com.
Mm-hmm.
Who put together all the verbiage for your site? Is that you?
Some of it's me. I have a really talented friend that's a PR person.
Okay.
That I lean on sometimes.
Cool. It's I like, handsome sites with clean copy is kind of my, my biggest nerd.
Site design is me.
Cool. Very nice.
A lot of the words are his.
So Big Bad Things, 2012 single by 10 Foot Twins, a.k.a. Jackie Myers Band. Is that? Okay. That's on the Bandcamp, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And then the Buckhorn Saloon from 2017, Beneath Stained Glass.
Yeah, that was a fun album.
Okay. Jackie Myers and Paradise Winds.
Yeah, so we did that in Arizona.
Okay.
In Tempe, Arizona. And the Paradise Winds had a connection with my drummer. Joey, the bassoonist for that group, knew the drummer from days prior.
Okay.
And I was getting more into like arranging for larger groups, and we were going through that area anyway. It's actually we went there to record that album after my first time playing at Green Lady Lounge in Kansas City.
No kidding.
Yeah, we played there like during a daytime shift. It was a couple years before I moved here. And then we went straight to Tempe, Arizona and recorded this album. And I caught some like terrible bug on the way and recorded that with like a pretty bad like flu type thing going on. But that's one if I had to pick one, that might be like one of my favorite albums. Because it's just, that wind ensemble, we recorded it in a church. Like, it was just so ideal in so many ways. That group had two of my best friends on it.
Nice.
Adam Nuri and the late Mitchell Vandenberg.
That name seems familiar.
He was a bassist in Austin.
Oh, okay.
Great guy, great bass player. And I was lucky enough to be able to record with him. Before he got in, there was a car accident on a tour.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow. But the Buckhorn Saloon is the venue, and Beneath Stained Glass is the name of the release, or am I backwards on that?
Buckhorn Saloon, Beneath Stained Glass is the name of the album.
Okay.
And Buckhorn Saloon is it's a little bar in Wyoming.
Okay.
And we know about it because we toured through Wyoming. I used to tour like full time. I don't really do that anymore. But the Buckhorn... there's just some like story. It's got kind of a wild past.
Nice.
So
Cool. And no touring anymore because you gig enough locally to scratch rich and pay your bills and all that sort of stuff, or
pretty much.
Okay.
I do. I'll take an occasional trip down to Austin. We'll play the Elephant Room, and we usually go by the Grey Dog Listening Room in Oklahoma. The Elephant Room is like there's just this wonderful jazz club in Austin. We don't really have anything like that in this town. We have a wonderful jazz community. It's just a different kind of club.
Okay.
So for me, it's worth the trip to go play there.
Okay. And then third, a full length with an exclamation point, full length 11-track LP, also from 2017. So those were and then there was a single off of third. So there were four things visible on Bandcamp. But the website, I think, says 7 albums and an 8th in the works.
Yeah.
So they're just not all on Bandcamp, is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's mostly just due to organizational issues by the leader.
The leader of Jackie Myers Music? We won't name any names, though.
I'm pretty good at updating the website, but like in terms of getting everything on every streaming platform I get lost in the details there.
Yeah. So, but are all 7...
They're out there.
They're
you
out
can
there.
find them. Yeah.
Okay. I thought I peeked at maybe at Apple and didn't see something that looked like 7 albums and
Yeah,
kept
they're
moving.
not all on any one platform. You have to go to like different ones,
Okay.
basically.
Okay. Fair enough.
But like same PR guy that did my bio on my website, we have like a bunch of goals that we need to meet before the recording date for the new album in June, and that's one of them. It's just like get everything. Are we doing this purposefully, or should we get everything on these platforms? You know what I mean? And make like, yeah, we're
It's
going
like
to
tomorrow. I'm not kidding. I'm kidding.
and my heart pressure goes up.
Well, it just, I feel like, without question, every month and every year as you know, grow older, are faster than the previous.
know.
And every once in a while, something feels extra fast.
I know.
And for me, March, I was like, I'm still like, my head is spinning.
Right.
So
Oh, we got caught up in March too because we had we have dogs. We're very into our dogs.
Okay.
One of our dogs ate a baseball, and so he needed like an extreme amount of medical attention. And I was just like with him through this process the whole time. He needed multiple surgeries, and it's just like, so he's on the mend though. He's doing good. And then we had this where my wife works. That business is in the crosshairs of that stadium build.
Oh.
So we're big on the vote no side.
Okay.
We've been like campaigning for that.
Yeah.
And it just it went by very quickly.
Man, I feel your pain on the dog. I just, right before you got here, put our pup outside, just because there's gonna, whatever. I mean, it's too long for her to be in her crate. She cannot be trusted for 10 seconds.
What kind of pup you got?
She's an Australian Shepherd mix.
Oh yeah, they're way too smart.
Yeah, she's so smart.
Yeah, they're too smart.
And she's 2, and we wanted to get. I had no animals growing up, so as soon as I was out of the house, I was gonna get a dog, and I ended up moving into a place where some pups were born. Named him McConnell after Paige McConnell from Fish, and he was 14 and change, and got real. He had a number of surgeries across his journey. Got hit by a truck, ate some rug.
Gosh.
And then, but 14 going on 15, he got real sick real fast, and we had adopted it, just like a routine. Took the dog and the cat to the vet. There was a flyer for a pup that needed a home. Adopted him, and named him Medeski, just to stick with the pianist thing. And he got to learn the ropes from the old guy, and the old guy was invigorated. And I was like, I'm 1,000%. This is how I'm going to move about my dog life forever. Is when the old one is getting up there, get a new one, and they get some time. So Medeski was getting old and wanting to move in that direction, and noticed what ended up being a soft tissue sarcoma on his knee. And so I tried to like sublingually and topically treat it with CBD, and it didn't work. So leg had to come off at 13, and stairs and going to the anyway. He developed a whole bunch of different sets of anxiety that kind of came and went, and one of them was the blow dryer after a groomer visit, and there was some blood in his urine, and they're like, that's our second red flag, we need to do an ultrasound. Turns out his spleen was like ginormous and riddled with cancer, so that had to come out. And then while they were intubating him, they saw a whole bunch of cancer in his throat. All that to say, he was around for 2 more years. In fact, in June, it was when we put him, he was like 3 weeks shy of 15. But once he got cancer free, we resumed puppy search, found this, and I gave the kids 27 pianist names, and they were like, this sucks. And so,
did you try Jackie Myers? Did you even try?
So what ended up happening was, from that list, everybody got to make a top 3, and then everybody could protect one of their top 3, and you could cancel one from anybody's list. So then we got it down, and Ellington was in the mix, And I said you could call her Ellie. And so anyway, she's, it was wild. Like all he wanted to do was just pivot to avoid her, and all she wanted to do was play. Like she loved him so much. But now she's coming up on a year on her own in the house. But still, like she feels safe in her crate. A lot of people look at it like it sucks for her, but I mean that's the first place she goes. And she's very skittish.
Yeah,
especially
crates are a godsend for some dogs, especially insecure dogs.
Yeah, and a lot of dudes have been in that chair, and most of those she's like,
Yeah.
It takes, and not all women, but for the most part, she. Anyway, she's great, and I knew there was a litter that we chose from, and she was the only girl, and I was like, I've had 2 boy dogs. Let's give this grin. She's so freaking smart.
Cool.
It is awesome.
Very
cool.
So
third, we talked about third. You have some ducks to get in a row before you record the new album, but it's written-ish.
Yes, the songs are written. The arrangements, I'm still working on them.
Okay.
I'm doing that.
Does that mean tabbing who will play what?
No, I've got that.
Okay.
Everybody's in line.
What they will play.
What notes they'll play.
Okay.
Yeah, how they'll play them, things like that.
Okay.
And deciding when not to say exactly what they'll play and give them space too. That's really important.
Okay.
But I'm like dealing with sort of almost like a math problem. In fact, we can jump into one of the records with this sentiment.
Okay.
In school, I went back to school during the pandemic because there wasn't much else for me to do. I'd already gotten in, but the pandemic hit, and I was like, I can't go anymore. I have no way of making income. And that Mitch Butler was there at the time, and he called me and was just like, what can we do? And we sat down and figured out a plan. They gave me a little bit more of a scholarship, and I was just like, I'm never going to get this deal again. I will figure it out. And I worked 4 different jobs, and I did grad school. During that time...
This is your MA in music from UMKC.
Yeah.
You got a BA in music from Grinnell, and then Berklee School of Music certificate as well. Super, super educated gal.
I like school.
Yeah,
now I do. When I was young, I hated
I
school. It's the weirdest thing.
I know.
I mean, like, honestly, I think of going for my PhD a fair amount of the time. My wife is like, all right, we don't have kids. I mean, do what you want to do. But I don't know. I might. I very well might. I loved going back to classes. As an adult, it's such like, you're just like, you look around and you're like surrounded by people that sometimes are like quite a bit younger, and they're kind of like goofing off, and you're like, they are giving this to you for free. Well, not quite for free, but they're giving it away. Like, it's knowledge you can use, man. And I had no shame as an adult. Like, I definitely, when I was younger, I would be insecure when I didn't know something, or I needed to ask a question or thing. And like, as an adult, I'm just like, I don't get it. You got to tell me another way. And they'd tell it, and I'd be like, you got to do it again. Yeah. Like,
I'll stay after for a minute and see what's up, or come by your office hours.
Right. I was like using office hours. I'd be there like 10 minutes early every time. Just like shamelessly nerdy.
Like, fuck, this one, I can't.
Professors were, So anyway, I actually became somewhat close with some of my professors.
Nice.
And I kept sneaking over to the comp department. The comp department at UMKC is amazing. They're like a little bit quietly so, but like the nerd composers know of them.
Nice.
And I studied under a guy named Yotam Haber.
Okay.
Dr. Yotam Haber a fair amount. And he introduced me to concepts that as a jazz musician, I'd never even heard of.
Wow.
And I'm like, I've been a musician for, that's pretty much, I don't know, like a long time. I started playing professionally when I was like 18.
Wow.
Like semi-professionally, like at a restaurant in a corner.
Austin, Texas?
No, I was in DC at the time.
DC.
But after school, I went to Austin and I started playing.
Okay. Born and raised where then?
DC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Most people think of me as from Austin because that's where I started doing any music.
Okay.
And that's where I know anything about the industry or how to do this like professionally and what it takes to run a band, things like that. The more professional aspects of that don't come with school, I learned all of those from Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And that town
good scene to learn it in.
It's an amazing scene. Amazing people there. Like, the town has changed a lot, and everyone talks about that. But the people who are musicians there, amazing people.
Nice.
So anyway, I was sneaking over to the comp department a fair amount, and what I discovered is that there are there are these movements in composition that have been happening that haven't really little traipses into the jazz world, but haven't really hit it like full blast. And one of them that I became really fascinated with is spectral music. And spectral music, like, let's say I make any sound, right? I'd go like this. If you were to analyze that with a computer, you'd see like how many different tones were in that very millisecond, right? And they would show up and be like this overtone series.
Huh.
Another way to think about it is if you hit like the like bottom note on a piano, you kind of hear the other notes.
Yeah.
Because there's sympathetic vibrations.
Huh.
And that's the overtone series. And
Okay.
there's this whole group of composers. Gerard Grisset is my favorite. And they would like analyze something like a wave.
Huh.
And then create an orchestral arrangement of that phenomenon.
Wow.
By examining like the overtones and these, and I was just like, what? And oftentimes the overtones aren't like in our 12-tone scale.
Okay.
They're like in between some of the notes.
Huh.
And I was aware that other countries have like 24 note scales, 24 tet is what it's called, or 48, where there's like notes between. But I had no real motivation to go and find and use those notes because I couldn't figure out really with my understanding of music where that would fit in. But when I understood like spectral music and you're just like, oh, the overtone series is accentuating this bass sound. You can like put an exclamation point on this like very low note by accentuating all these little ripples of sound that make it.
Wow.
And I thought, why couldn't I do this in jazz? So I'm trying to figure out how to put some of that knowledge, even if it's just ornamental and it's not like fundamental to the pieces, it's not like changing the chord changes or the melody, how to highlight
little decorations.
Yes,
okay.
How to highlight that stuff with that knowledge. So that's kind of what I'm going for in this album. And I've made like 3 arrangements so far. I'm only going for about 6 songs.
Okay.
I've written the songs, did
Half
3 arrangements.
hour or?
No, probably longer, maybe 45.
Okay, cool.
Might do like 1 cover, maybe 1 more song. We'll see. But honestly, they're probably going to be pretty long songs.
Okay.
And I don't care how long it is.
Okay.
Albums are not like conceptual albums or albums as an idea are not really that relevant anymore. Everybody does singles.
They are to me.
I know. I know. It hurts me too.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And like we're about to talk about some albums, right?
Yep.
And like I love them as like full works.
Yeah.
That's what I want to listen to is like
I only
albums.
ask because I am curious about track sequence, track listing, track runtime, album runtime. And, you know, just to have a ballpark, like, you know, if it's 6 songs, I would expect the way you see a lot of things go, that it's 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. And it's like, okay, I call that an EP, but just being a nerd, you know.
You call it whatever you want,
a
you know?
goofball.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I ask, because, so you say, you say, I ask 30, you go 45. I'm like, cool. Like, I like the content.
Yeah, I think it will be, because like the more and more I get into it, the more and more I'm realizing that I have to push harder into the spectral stuff, which means I'll have to write like sequences that aren't currently there in the middle to highlight some of those concepts. But we'll see.
Yeah.
It's like a math problem I haven't found the end of yet. And I brought the 3 arrangements into Yatam, and I was just like, Dr. Hopper. And I was like, what do you think? And he was like, you know, he's just like
the board. And...
I don't know. I mean, I guess this is like starting to be, just go further, way further. And he was very clear that it just wasn't quite there. And that's how he and I work together. That sounds harsh, but actually he's like, we have a good dynamic of him being able to be like real direct and be like, no. And I'll be like, okay, cool. And I'll go back, and he like really fires me up about different concepts.
Yeah.
So yeah. And one album that he pointed me to was on our list.
Okay.
Steve Lehman's.
I mean,
the Octet album.
Bruh. To quote my, because so, you know, jazz is a fascinating thing. in that it's not for everybody.
Right.
And for the folks that it is for, there's a couple camps and some, background music while you work or drive or whatever. And then fans, right, that are like students of it. So I've had, do you know Adam Wilkie by chance? He's a guitarist.
Sounds really familiar.
He's older than me, actually. He gigs. Spent a lot of time in St. Louis. Now he's kind of at Topeka-ish, but he gigs. Anyway, he 15 jazz records, so like that's a big listen for me, like to mindfully take all of that in, and I know that it's all unique and different, but it can, I think you can trick yourself into thinking that a lot of it sounds similar if you're not like a big student of anyway. So rolling through your list, I was very mindful about, there's one of them that has a lot of strings on it. And there's there's a couple that have got clubby, but like they were all very comfortable and enjoyable. And this fella, Steve Lehman Octet, 2009, eighth record of 16/8 tracks, better part of 40 minutes. I'd never heard of him before. Digital footprint was not as big as some. So I'm like, oh, I wonder who this is. And then I put it on. I was like, this is intense.
Yeah. And if you look into his story at all and where he sits in like jazz history, I think he'll be in the books in like 25 years. Like
this got Jazz Album of the Year by the New York Times.
That doesn't surprise me. I didn't know that, but yeah.
And he's a professor of music at the California Institute of the Arts. Mm-hmm. I mean, anyway.
He also wrote a dissertation on this album, which
really?
I'm like about halfway through.
Okay.
And it's like, not only can he play this stuff, he can very much express what he's doing.
Huh.
And sometimes it's kind of like science teachers. Sometimes you get like a brilliant scientist who has no idea how to communicate with others. I had that in school, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. You could do it, but you're not telling me how to. He has the gift of being able to be like, he's just very, very articulate.
Wow. Huh.
It's dense, but it's like, and he has carefully, if you're wondering like, oh, maybe he just kind of made some noise here. Like he has carefully chosen, like all of these are very strong, thought out decisions. And that's like, I talk about Dr. Haber. That's like his one rule. He's like, I care about intentionality more than anything.
Oh, wow. And
like,
he's the one that turned you on to this
yeah,
one.
he did tell me about this. Yeah.
Okay.
And like right off the bat, in terms of microtonality, like boiling that word down to something a little bit more palatable or easier to discuss for people that are used to 12-note scales like you and I are, right off the bat, he does it. Wah, wah, wah. And you hear the two instruments playing that same note, but one of them almost sounds like a little out of tune. That one of those instruments is playing a quarter tone off from the other one.
Okay.
So half a note.
Wild.
Different than the other, and right off the bat he's like shoving that down your throat, and he's just like, this is what the album is going to be. And I just like, I love that choice as an opener for an album, and I feel you with your love of like the entire arc of an album, because that's how I am too. And when I even thinking about my 6-song thing, even though it's not going to be very long, I am already being like, okay, this will kind of like show that I'm starting to use these ornamental concepts. This one will dive in a little bit more. Like I'm trying to like figure out my arc of
and if I were me, the exact same person that I am 100 years from now or whatever, when you're no longer here but your body of work is here, I might pick up on that, and that might be like fun and giddy to be like, this is where she started.
Right.
I don't even know how to describe, you know what I'm saying? But
right.
like, and then I would have my eyes peeled even more so in the subsequent album.
Right.
I don't know.
No, that makes sense. And I think what I was getting at before is there's really a difference between like art and industry, like more so than there should be, especially today. And so when you think of like releasing an album, you have to take some of these things into consideration. Very few people release just like a whole album anymore. You're doing like one song every, I think the whatever format needs to be like every 3 weeks for it to get the most potential for streaming or things like that. And the attention span that you're dealing with your consumers is nowhere what it was even like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You could release an album and people might listen to the whole thing. You and like 2 or 3 other people are going to listen to this album front to back, but other people might listen to like one song. This album, I don't know how many times I've listened to this in the last like three or 4 months. I guess it's a podcast, so I should say the Lehman album that we're talking about. I have listened to his album. He's got others too, and they're good. This one is my favorite though.
Okay.
And I love the arc of this album.
Sure.
And specifically that first track is just like
pretty bonkers.
Yeah.
So performing professionally since age 18, were mom and dad put on music in the home for you guys to listen to when you were young, or?
Yeah, my dad's real into music.
Okay. What's he into?
He loves jazz.
Jazz? Okay,
Yeah.
Nice.
He loves a lot of things. I mean, he likes a lot of soul music from back in the 60s and 70s.
Sure.
Marvin Gaye, loves Marvin Gaye.
Nice.
But we would go to the Kennedy Center. I grew up in D.C. The Kennedy Center would have this series, and it would be in like the smaller, like offshoot stages. And it would be a jazz series.
Oh, cool.
And I signed up for something in school where they were like, go and see these like at least 2 concerts every month or something. And my dad was like, oh, we're definitely,
nice.
I'm in, you know.
Nice.
And he would take me to like, what is that, Blues Alley, or like the Kennedy Center, little things like that, Twins Jazz. I don't know, we went to Twins Jazz for that class, but that was a big jazz club back in D.C. Before the pandemic took it up. But so we went and saw a lot of jazz together when I was younger.
Nice.
I didn't, at the time, I don't even know if I was like, okay, that's a theme. I hear it again later. You know, I don't think I really conceptualized exactly how it worked or what I was listening to. And then later when I really understood, when I joined like jazz band and things like that,
right.
and I wasn't in jazz band in high school.
Okay.
Almost all the musicians in the jazz scene like that I know, they're like pretty invested since like middle school, high school, things like that. But I was too shy to be in band when I was like playing at home and I was writing, but
piano.
I was like, yeah.
Taking lessons.
I did take lessons from a young age, but then at some point during high school, my teacher fired me, and I didn't think that was possible. But I just because I would come in with all these pieces I'd written, and I wouldn't do anything she asked me to do. And she was like,
okay.
I don't know what we can work on. And I'd be like, but what about this thing? And she'd be like, okay. Like, and I didn't know. I mean, you know, as a kid, I didn't really know that wasn't really an appropriate way to conduct myself.
I mean, or it is the appropriate way. It just goes against the grain of the traditional piano lesson.
And she mentioned at the time her son was like a comp major or something, and she mentioned trying to get me to work with him a little bit, but I don't know, my parents were really busy. I was really busy with sports, and it never came through. And it looked like I was going to go into science, so it was like, all right, whatever. But then in college, I just couldn't stop. I could not stay away from the piano, and I couldn't stop.
Grinnell?
Yeah.
And that's where?
Iowa.
Okay.
It's funny that you say that because one of their like they have a merch item and it's a T-shirt and it says "Where the hell is Grinnell?" because nobody knows where that is.
I've recognized the name, and I mean I don't know. I should have Googled it, but
you're not alone.
Yeah. So seeing jazz performances with Dad, any traditional concert outings in addition to, or when you were young, or?
I mean, yeah, we'd go and see music.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any specifics, but we lived in such a like huge metropolis, so I remember there were like concerts in the park, kind of by my house.
Yeah.
And my dad had this huge record collection.
Nice.
So we'd play that a lot.
Does he still?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I just sent him some records actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there a first record or album for you that started your collection, or one that you fell in love with that was his or a friend's, or?
You know who I loved Billy Joel and Elton John when I was in middle school.
Lovely.
Like just obsessed with them.
Yeah.
Many of their records, just like that was kind of my first just like deep dive
into
things.
I love Billy Joel so much. I mean, one of the things going around right now, and I haven't completely divorced myself from the reaction video community, but one that's going around right now is folks watching New York State of Mind, and it's from the 70s, and he got a sig going the whole time and a big afro and just soulful as can be, man. It's such fun stuff.
Great tune.
Shows, early records, piano lessons into playing professionally at 18, and at Grinnell, you couldn't stop playing. What was it about that time and that experience, that happening?
Honestly, I think it was just an age thing.
Okay.
I think some people mature at different rates. I don't think I knew who I was for a long time. I didn't know what my real interests were. I knew what I was good at.
Sure.
I knew what I worked really hard at. I had been like a jock, basically.
Oh,
I worked
yeah? Okay.
like did a lot of sports. And I think when you grow up doing that, it takes a minute to like let it sink in that might not be. It turns out I am not actually a 6'5".
What were some of your favorites?
I played baseball. Baseball was my favorite sport.
Okay.
Then probably volleyball and basketball. But yeah, I'm just like, I had a lot of enthusiasm. I was that player that got like, not, what was it? Most improved. I got that one. Or like most spirited. Like almost never like MVP or anything.
Right.
And I'm just like not that big or strong or fast. Yeah. And it took me a while to be like, oh, I guess it's not what I'm going to do. And I liked it. I really I'm just like naturally competitive.
Sure.
And I still like, I'm a runner and I do things like that.
You run now?
Yeah.
Okay.
But man, that's not the most alive I ever feel is playing music. And I'd never performed. I'd written a little bit, and I knew that when I wrote music, I felt a lot. I had these big emotions when I would write music.
Yeah.
And that I was like really compelled to do so. It wasn't a thing where I'd be like, I'm going to sit down and write music. It was like I could not do anything but write music sometimes. Especially like in high school, there'd be times I didn't know how to deal with myself or anything else.
Right.
And the only way that I could, but I would just I'd write music, especially if my folks weren't home, because I could have the whole living room. And then later on, I still like gravitated towards it. They had these practice rooms in college where you could just have like a tiny room alone with a piano. And no one could hear you. And I was like,
really?
This is great.
Nice.
So I just kept going over there. And it was kind of like, grad school, I kept sneaking over to the comp department.
Right.
I loved the jazz department. And I'm especially lucky to have spent time with Bobby Watson there.
Okay.
I was able to get his last year at UMKC. And he had a huge impact on me and my outlook and like my playing. But in college, I was like, all right, I'm going to be a physics major. But what about the piano? And I would go to the science building to the piano over and over and over again. And I just couldn't keep myself in the science building. So I just finally gave in and majored in music from a school that doesn't really their music department isn't where they focus.
Sure.
So that was an odd choice for me. But once I changed over, I was like, oh, this is who I am. And then when I was able to study at UMKC, it was even more like, I mean, by that point, I'd been a professional for many years, but I was just like, this is so nice to be able to explore this with these people.
What kind of time does it take for one to earn a music certificate from Berklee School?
Oh, gosh. I think you just have to take 3 online classes.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't,
gotcha.
It's not that
bad. Is this the Boston?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But folks do go there and attend in person.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, they have both.
Gotcha.
They have I think they have graduate school now too.
Nice.
But I was on the road. I spent 10 years touring in Austin with different bands, with my own and different groups.
Sure.
And I was becoming frustrated because sometimes we'd spend 8 hours in a van trying to get to a gig, and I just felt like the time was wasted. What was I learning? What was I doing? And after a certain amount of years, it just felt like my skill set wasn't getting better. I didn't know where my next step was. I wasn't really you hit a certain point and you're just the amount of money in my bank account hasn't changed in 6 years. I don't know where I'm going next. I like what I'm doing. I would love to be able to like have some decisions here rather than just like getting in the van and accepting whatever happens.
Yeah.
So I started studying, and I missed composing. So
Cool.
I like signed up for these classes so I could do something in the van and try to figure out kind of a way off the road so that I could practice more and develop some skill sets rather than stay like static in what I was able to do.
Sure.
I wouldn't change what I would do that again 1,000 times. I'd
Yeah.
go on the road 1,000 times
Yeah.
again.
Oh, yeah?
It was great. I regret nothing. But that was like why I started taking those Berklee classes, which is because like, okay, I've done this. How do I reach like any sort of like next level, even if it's just for me?
Yeah.
So I took a bunch of classes, and that way in the van, I would have my laptop and my noise canceling giant headphones and a little keyboard.
And staring at a screen while moving doesn't
Yeah.
do any...
Oh, it was weird. It got weird.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just from work things where, you know, you got to travel to whatever town for like a regional meeting, but you're going to sit in this place for 3 hours and it takes 2.5 to get there. And there's also, 6 hours worth of work that you're expected to have done. And so some of that's got to either you're going to do it Friday night or Saturday or on the weekend, or you're going to try and hammer some of it out in the car. And it's like, ugh, this does not feel good.
Well, when you spend 10 years in a van, you get pretty used to it.
There you go.
It did. I mean, there were some weird moments, but you just...
Well, thanks again for being here, and thank you for your list. We jumped to the end, and now we're going to jump back to the beginning. Ella and Louis. Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, 1956.
Yep.
11 tracks, first of 3 they did together.
I think that's right,
Features Oscar Peterson, the Oscar Peterson Quartet, and Herb Ellis, which includes Herb Ellis, Ray Brown, and Buddy Rich. Let's see here. What do I have a quote? Different favorite albums during different stages, then exploration stopped prioritizing my tastes and judgments. Was more focused on learning. That's you. Is that you? Am I quoting you there?
Correct.
So okay, I know why. Exploration stopped prioritizing my tastes and judgments, was more focused on learning. So we're talking about
It sounds like
listening to music for fun versus trying to teach yourself.
Yeah.
And so the ask is, where on that spectrum is this one for you?
Oh man, this has an overlap in both
Okay.
areas. Like the Steve Lehman album is like exploration, and then it's like something I can't get out of my head and I'm obsessed with. And yeah, but this was, gosh, when did I discover this album? I think I was 27.
Okay.
And I learned Stars Fell in Alabama. And that's like the second jazz standard I had learned. I learned In My Solitude first because I was obsessed with Billie Holiday. And she has this like beautiful, just devastatingly emotional version of that tune.
Okay.
And I just love the way she can just like, she can bring you to your knees, like just with her tone. And I just like fell for that. Ella is very, very different. Ella is like, well, he's going to come up later, but she's like the Oscar Peterson of vocalists, right? Like she just has so much ability, like just pure ability. She can run scales. She can do solos. She can execute the melodies. Whereas Billie Holiday is kind of making these songs her own every single time. And I don't think that's a choice for her. I think that's just like, that's who she was.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But Ella was like, just a person of craft, like highly skilled, almost like an athlete of jazz,
Yeah.
Just incredible vocalist. And if you're going to do jazz vocals at all, you know who Ella Fitzgerald is.
Sure. Yeah.
Just kind of like if you're going to do like jazz bass, you know who Jocko is. Ella is the Jocko of...
I just saw, I think, what you were, something floating around. Sorry.
There's a little fly somewhere.
Yeah. Ella is the Jocko, you said?
Yeah.
So that one was 1956, 10 years later, 4 and More. Miles Davis, 11 of 37 lives, plus 63 studios. 6 tracks, 53 minutes. George Coleman, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams. If they're so 63 and 27. I'm sorry, 63 and 37. If there's literally a cool even 100 Miles records, studio and live combined, to choose from, why does this one have a spot on the Jackie Myers list?
Oh gosh. Well, it was recorded in 64, I think.
Okay.
And then released in 66. And it was a double thing. Like My Funny Valentine was also recorded on the same date.
Oh.
They were recorded live.
Okay.
In New York. And live is really crucial to understanding why this album is like very important. Because these musicians had toured together. And they have this chemistry together that like really can't be achieved unless there's a gelling or a bonding. And that is so key to some elements of improvisation. And when you listen to this, you can tell. You can tell that they feel very safe to go where they need to go to express themselves and to come back. Whereas if they don't know each other, they're probably staying in the box a little bit more. And this is just like a prime example of a quintet being able to improvise with each other with a lot of comfort and chemistry. You can hear them playing off each other the entire time. Like Tony and Miles are like clearly obsessed with each other.
Nice.
And Herbie, there's like a Flight of the Bumblebee quote kind of in the first song, the So What? And he's like, and Herbie like echoes it with this thing.
Does
and
he? Oh, man.
The whole band just kind of like has ears open. It's like no one is concentrating on their part. Everybody's really part of the whole sound. And they're just so cohesive as a unit.
That's so cool.
And you can feel it. It's just like electric. And there's so much of jazz that I think, like I love jazz albums, but jazz, because it's improvisational, which is art performed in the moment, it's like 20 times better live all the time. It's like you can't really even experience it unless you can, but it's just different. And you sort of get that here. When you listen to this, because it's a live album, you can feel their energy and you can hear the audience, and it's just like, it's just supreme.
For sure. A little bit of a deviation as we go from 66 to 71 with Tapestry. Carole King, second of 25 for her, 12 tracks, 44 minutes. Most successful of her 25, and held the weeks at number one by a female artist record for 20 years. 75 million records overall sold, 4 Grammys, 3-time Hall of Famer, and more accolades than one would care to list. I love a first-timer here on the old program. So no Carole King records prior to today. So tell me about this one for you.
Oh, man. Well, for me, like, the role that this record plays in my history as a musician is when I was working in Austin. I was touring a lot with this guy named Doug Strahan.
Okay.
And I was kind of like a side, mostly, for lack of a better term, sideman. That's what it's called when you play for a band and you're not leading it. And that was mostly my role for a long time. It's just like I was touring with different bands. And I'd sort of like given up momentarily on making albums and leading my own thing. It just got so hard, and I just like, I felt like I wasn't going anywhere, and I just like had that moment where I was like, I don't know if I believe in this, you know?
But people are digging you and reaching out to you to do things with them, like, consistently.
As a player, yeah. But like my original work, I'm like, maybe I, you know, even though I've done this forever.
Maybe it's not in the cards.
Yeah, maybe that's not my thing. And then, and nobody said that to me. No one like.
No,
But that's how I felt.
Sure.
And Doug was really supportive in general. He's a great band leader. If anyone listens to this, go listen to Doug Strahan. He's one of my favorite songwriters still to this day.
Really?
Yes. I think he's incredible. Great player, great songwriter. I'm honored to have worked with him.
Cool.
Anyway, his now wife, Samantha, called me, and we were on the road, and she was like, I want to do a Carole King tribute, and I think you'd be perfect for it.
What?
And she'd seen me play with him, and I can only assume they spoke. And I was like, well, I was kind of hesitant, and then, the call to like lead a band again and like put something together, and of this incredible album of like one of the strongest songwriters of our time, or of her time, really.
Right.
But still, like, that we've ever known in this country. And I was like, maybe, maybe this like gets me sort of back into a lane where I'm comfortable.
Cool.
And we did it. We did it at this smaller venue. I'm having trouble remembering the name of the venue right now, but it's like, so it's just a little bar with a stage.
Covered the whole thing?
Oh, yeah.
How much time practicing, rehearsing?
Lots.
Yeah. I bet.
Yeah, we did a tribute to we did the entire album.
Wow, that's cool.
I had 4 singers, I think. Yeah, 4 singers and myself. Guitarist, bass, drums, and me. And that was the band. So it worked out because each of the singers could pick like 2 or 3 songs.
Oh, nice.
And then the other singers would do harmonies. I did lead on 1 or 2. You know, everybody picked what they wanted, and we worked out harmonies together. And this thing like killed at this venue.
Cool.
We packed it, and it did so well that we were able to book Stubbs next. You know what Stubbs is in Austin? Stubbs Barbecue is like one of the bigger venues. We had the inside stage, but it was still like I'd never played Stubbs before. It was a pretty big deal, and we did well at Stubbs too.
When is this?
This is 2016.
Okay.
I want to say.
Okay. So how? What was the approach to publicizing your this performance? You said you packed it. I mean, was it like
posters?
Okay,
Lots of posters.
Cool. Nice.
I don't remember if we got it. Later on, I was able to like network enough to get things like, I could just call up somebody I know that like does the local morning news kind of thing, or like the local radio thing. Like that was in my bag later on, but I think I was still too small time to be able to like have those type of connections, but Sam might have had them. Sam is like really good at stuff like that. So yeah, we did well at Stubbs, and then there was a venue like 4 hours away that had us come out and do it there too. That was crazy, and nice. I was just like, yeah, and it got me kind of excited again, and I did start
rekindle the old belief.
Yeah, and I started writing again, and it was kind of a turning point for me.
Very cool.
And I also found out that I could lead projects. Because, I mean, I led bands before, but, like, organizing work like that and making a cohesive project come together wasn't something that, I mean, I just, like, didn't believe I could do a lot of this stuff.
You got to learn your parts. Everybody else got to learn their parts, and you guys got to get together and...
Oh, I found their parts for them.
Oh.
Like, I, like, put all the charts in a Google folder type thing.
Okay, interesting.
Because it's kind of, I mean, I could have done it that way, but I just felt like it would be better if... Some of them probably did learn it by ear, and that's their choice. But if I don't give them the tools that are best for them,
then
that's not
yourself.
fair.
Yeah,
that's like shitty leadership.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then the next year I did Silent Films Out Loud. And what had happened is one of those courses from Berkeley was film composing.
Oh, wow.
I love writing scores.
Okay.
I haven't really found like a market for that. I've done like one trailer, a podcast, and I've scored a bunch of silent films. And
really?
Yeah.
Cool.
I
Is
love
that
like
on your site?
Yeah, I think there's a little button for silent films, but
okay.
So I became like really into Buster Keaton, and this was a jumping off point for me being like, well, maybe I can continue doing that. And I was in the middle of one of those courses, and my partner at the time, I was like, I wish I could write the whole score for this film. I enjoyed writing for this scene so much during this class. And she was like, then why don't you? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, where am I going to find the time? Nobody's going to play it and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, why not?
Why are you
Just
naysaying?
find people to play it. Find like a venue. Maybe you can get a grant. And I was like, what's a grant? and I asked different people where the grants were and what to do, and I landed a grant that year for
wow.
You know, for me now that I look at bigger projects and what they really cost, they can be insane, you know. But I think the grant was for like $6,000 at the time. You would have thought I like won the lottery and I owned an island. Like that's how excited I was. Like I could do anything. Like
right.
And so we got this group together. We played at the Paramount.
Ooh. Okay.
Which is that is actually the theater that silent films would have gone through in Austin back in the day, which was so exciting.
Huh.
We had like I want to say 14-piece band, and we orchestrated all these 3 different silent films. We had scores for them, and the way we did it was I sunk a click track into the film, and then we sent an earbud down to the conductor, so that so that everything would stay exactly where it needed to be in the film.
Huh.
And we had a live band right underneath the screen, and people could watch it. And we packed that. I mean, not every seat, but it was over 200 people for a first-time production. Was like, so yeah, that was like, this was the reason that convinced me that maybe I was capable of anything like that.
So that's 8-ish years ago, or?
Yeah, just about.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that same time period, I started creeping up to Kansas City and playing the Green Lady once in a while.
Oh, okay.
And John Scott was like, you should move here and play jazz. And I was like, I should move there and play jazz. But again, like, there was no semblance of a person who thought they could do any of those things before this happened. So this record and that work taught me like a lot of things about myself, about songwriting.
So cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it's a really interesting record too,
It
because she's got, like, she had a very supportive network that helped her figure out that she could do things too.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like James Taylor.
Yeah.
Was like, they dated for a while.
Okay.
And he was like very supportive. He's on the record.
Yeah.
Joni Mitchell was also like really supportive of her work. She's singing backup on one of them. And James Taylor was like one of the primary people that were like, you could write your songs for yourself, because she was selling her songs a fair amount and doing pretty well at that. And he was like, yeah, but you have it. You can do this. Like, you should put it out under your name and record. And she did, and like wrote Tapestry. You know?
Very cool. Well, speaking of Joni, it was very not long ago that there had not been a Joni record on anybody's list, and then all of a sudden, it's just, they're coming. You know, there we go. Fast and Furious. And I think, I'm sad to say they're maybe blending a little bit together, but I think maybe even this one was on the episode that came out this week.
Did I give you Mingus? Is that what I...
Yes, Joni Mitchell Mingus. 1979, 10 of 19, 11 tracks, 37 minutes.
Yeah. Jocko's on this one.
15 musicians credited on that Carole King record, including, as you mentioned, none other than Joni herself. How big of a Joni fan are you?
Pretty big. There are definitely bigger Joni fans.
Okay.
I like this album specifically more than any of her other albums. I don't know why. It just speaks to me. There's a lot of jazz influence in this album too. She was buddy with a bunch of jazz scene people. She's close with Wayne Shorter and Jocko and folks like that. I think her and Herbie did some stuff together too.
Okay.
What's interesting though, like with my choices here, is that her album Blue came out around the same time as Tapestry.
Right.
So if it was a style thing, then I probably would have picked Blue, but the different albums just have different meanings to me in my like personal journey. And so this one, like, for a long time I didn't get Joni. I really didn't. It's kind of like how I was with jazz when I was younger. I liked it. I liked listening to it. But I think the younger me would have been like, I get this. And where I am now, I'm like, I had no idea what I was listening to. And that's how I feel about Joni. Like, when I listened to her when I was young, I remember that song, A Case of You. And she goes like, a case of you. And I was just like, I don't know about this. Why can't you stay on one note? You know,
okay. I see.
I just see. Like, I didn't understand why she had to do that with the melodies. They were so all, and then I stopped having conceptions of what melodies needed to be. You know, I got past that.
Whoa.
And it was just like, then you listen to it and you're just like, she's so beyond where anybody else was at that time. She's so creative. And also, as somebody who was developing as a vocalist, I mean, I couldn't sing for kind of a long time.
But you do now.
I do,
and
yeah.
You, while you're playing,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Was that a separate thing for you to learn, to mix those two to happen at the same time, or? Yeah,
that's a question I get like a fair amount, and like I think people who sing and play at the same time, like there's definitely a period of time where you're like, this is hard to do at the same time, but then you do it so much that you stop thinking about it, and it just becomes a thing, and you're fine then.
Cool.
But like, yeah. So this record Dry Cleaner from Des Moines is probably my favorite track on it. Very difficult tune, very well written tune.
Yeah.
And the control that she has, that ability where she's going, like how she can jump like that, is very, very difficult. And so you start looking at her stuff like a student, kind of like how I would look at Ella's stuff as a student after listening to Billy, who I thought was amazing and just portrayed so much emotion. But then you're like, all right, as a vocalist, how do I do stuff? Ella's kind of like,
stuff.
Yeah, but if you listen to Ella, her precision, like with how she gets to notes and what she's doing with her technique are like far beyond most singers, you know. Nat King Cole is another one, but beyond the jazz genre, it's really hard to find somebody who has as much control as Joni had in her prime.
Yes, it was this week's episode, and that guest gave me a list that was, these were some genres. Here's a few albums. Here's a big list of songs. So I kind of had to cobble stuff together to put any sort of order to it. And the reason was for this record to be part of her mix was Dry Cleaner from Des Moines.
Yeah, great tune.
Yeah, super great tune.
Well, and I would venture a guess as to why Joni's coming back a little bit and that's probably Brandi Carlile probably deserves some credit there.
Okay.
Brandi Carlile's very popular now.
Right.
Started out long journey to being like as incredibly famous as she is now. But now she's like winning awards and is like a household name. She gives a lot of credit to Joni, does Joni tributes, has Joni on stage. Like there's a lot of, yeah.
Okay.
So I think, and she does a really good job of going back and being like, these are the people who influenced me. These are the people I owe. And also her outreach in her community is also like extremely.
See, I love little things like that. And a lot of times a nugget such as that one, couldn't be discovered in liner notes.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other reason, album cover art and credits and producers and liner notes and photos and, just a million reasons why we should not be considering the album to be extinct or vanishing, if you will.
I hear that. But yeah, Brandi, and if somebody out there does not know Brandi Carlile, speaking of vocal control.
Yeah.
Woo,
and I feel like I've looked this up, but I can't remember, is or is not related to Belinda?
I have no idea.
Okay. Because she was like I don't remember what it was, but she had a big hit in the 80s. Around when like Tiffany, remember Tiffany? You're not? Okay. I think We're Alone Now. She did a cover of that. And I think she had another one, more ballady, that was a big hit. But there was a sort of an explosion of gals in the 80s, and Belinda Carlisle, I wish I could remember what track it was. Anyway, but yeah, Brandi she's been making waves in my mind for 6 or 7 or 8 years now.
Right, but she's been around for like 20 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So we mentioned Oscar Peterson earlier, 1979. Both of these, 1979. The Mingus by Joni and Skol by Oscar Peterson and Stéphane Grappelli.
Yeah.
Is that okay? 6 tracks, 39 minutes.
Do you know who Stéphane Grappelli? That's Django Reinhardt's. That's who plays fiddle.
Okay. Yeah. And when you were mentioning Jocko earlier, you were meaning Pistorius?
Yeah.
And it was on that Joni?
On the Joni record, yeah.
Okay,
I believe so.
Okay. This Scandinavian concert, whose name would make the Minnesota Vikings fans happy, incredible.
Right?
And so much talent, so much happening in so many different segments of every song. And so this is, if you're, at least from my perspective, interested in enjoying and being a student, this isn't one you want to put on for background noise or walk out of the room to change the load of laundry for, because you're going to miss something. Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard, though.
Yeah. What's the discovery story for you in this one?
gosh, how did I find this album? I had a pretty big Oscar Peterson phase. And I probably was just going down the list.
Okay.
And then this one. And I am like really partial to live albums, obviously. Especially in jazz.
Yeah.
For the reasons we discussed before. Yeah. But this one, I mean, that lineup is so crazy. It has Joe Pass. It has Oscar Peterson. And it has Stéphane Grappelli. And I knew his name from playing with Django. He's kind of like, if you know, like, some basics about jazz, you probably don't know who that is. But if you are a fiddle player and you've ever even thought about improvising, you know who that is.
Okay.
Like, he's the guy,
Nice.
you know? And I think, like, I was listening to this to hear Oscar, and he, of course, plays his tail off. You know, and he does not disappoint.
No.
But I found myself gravitating more and more towards Stéphane Grappelli's playing. Like, I thought he kind of, like, if there was any sort of competition, I kind of thought he ran away with it. It's just, like, his ability to hit those, like, high notes and, like, just poignantly highlight the melody. Like, he's just doing everything at, like, 110% at all times.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's surrounded by, like, probably one of the better, like, everyone on this album is so good.
Yeah.
That guy Orsted, him and Oscar have, like, a ton of work together.
Okay.
And he's up there with, like, my favorite bass players in jazz. He's just incredible. He takes an incredible solo in this album. I mean, everybody does, you know?
Yeah.
But the only player that I didn't know super well was Mickey Roker.
Okay.
But Mickey Roker's, he's like jazz royalty. I just didn't know about him
when I discovered it.
Yeah, when I discovered it.
Wow.
I don't even know where to go with it. It's just like everyone is so good, and they don't, with that many like amazing soloists, it would feel, I would think I would be like bombarded. Like it would be overload and everybody be playing on top of each other. But everybody's so respectful in this album. They just like support each other, and it's so cool.
I think so. One listen so far for me, perhaps similar. Like I think I subconsciously I'm gonna listen for Oscar, but then I'm like, well, what's going on over here? And then that happens 4 or 5 or 6 times, and then it all kind of evaporates into I'm just enjoying the hell out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it starts over with the next track, and sort of this, and eventually it's like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Like I really enjoyed this record a lot.
Yeah, it's great. And like, of course, I'm already like a Joe Pass fan because he performed so much with Ella.
Okay.
They did a bunch of like duo records. They
really?
toured together, yeah.
Okay.
A lot.
Cool.
I think he's one of the better accompanists that ever worked with a vocalist.
Nice.
In jazz.
Very nice. Great list. We need to wrap and get you out of here, but I like to do a quick goofy question run,
yay.
and then we'll get you on your way. So the first one is, if we can agree that everybody has a personal and a professional bucket list. Let's say you're given all the necessary resources to hammer out your number one on both of those lists. What are they? And I realize that sometimes they could be one and the same, but
bucket list as in like
things you'd like to accomplish.
I hit one last year.
Okay.
And I'll kind of like build on that.
Cool.
I wanted to play internationally.
Oh.
I didn't need to be like a big name, but it was a big goal of mine. I've toured. Touring was my first bucket list thing.
Okay.
I remember calling my mom when I was like, I think I was like 23 or 24. And I was just like, I know I want to be a touring musician. And she's like, okay, that sounds like it's not the best idea. And I was just like, I don't know how to tell you this.
Get paid for that?
Right. I was like, I have to do this. I'm going to figure out how. And in a couple of years I was. And like that, it's like every step I don't think I can get there. And when I do, it feels like I've like, everything is like, I've won the lottery.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this elated. And then I'm like, oh, but I'm playing in this coffee shop to 2 people, you know, like what is touring really, you know, when you first start out. And then even when you get to the higher levels.
I don't have an entourage yet.
Right. And yeah, it can be really grueling. It's a very difficult lifestyle.
Sure.
So then it wasn't that anymore. And then it was like, I really just want to play jazz full time. I just want to focus on that. And I want to play jazz specifically in Kansas City. I think Kansas City jazz, for me, I'm like, that's it. That's the sound. So when I got invited up here, I was like, okay, I've done it. Like, this is all I have. And now, yeah, and I did have a bucket list of just like, I want somebody to, I don't want to just like wander over across the pond and like impose myself somewhere and play a piano. I want somebody to want me to go over there and play an instrument. And last year I got flown out to do a festival with a blues artist I work with named Nick Schneblin.
Cool.
It was so cool. And so that was, and I guess
I couldn't help but, as you're saying, I want somebody to want, like, I'm Cheap Trick immediately.
Want you to want me. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's on 10 Things I Hate About You, the soundtrack. Great tune. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know, but R.I.P. Heath Ledger. Anyway, yeah, now I would love to go to Europe and play some of my music. I think that's like my next thing. More immediately, I would like to pour my efforts into this album.
The one that you got
that I'm gonna make in June.
Okay.
And I have so many goals for that. Like, there's been times where I made albums in ways that I regret. Like, I like really was like, I need this to be like this, you know, in ways that didn't give enough room for the music to breathe or the people to be the people they are. And I really like believe in the folks that that have agreed to make this with me. And I want to make this process like just as much theirs if I can, and highlight how they play and what they add to the music better than I've done in the past, and just like honor them with that and give them like a platform.
Hopefully you're giving yourself a little bit of kudos for having this awareness, this recognition that, oh, I did it this way and now I want to do it this way, because you could just blindly trudge through and just do all of your projects the same way every time, right?
I could, but then they would all sound the same, and more importantly, they'd be really boring.
Right, but I mean, there's merit to be acknowledged in recognizing this is the way that this went, and now I'd like to do something a little different.
Oh, I appreciate you saying so.
Right? I mean, if for somebody who has a time or two not had a full bucket of belief in Project X that's right in front of you, I mean, I think it's cool. So,
right, and that's another one of my goals is like, you know, that's like too much focus on like the mirror of your own career. Even like believing too much in yourself is almost the same as not believing enough in yourself.
Well said.
It's like, it's not about you.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that I can like really get out of any of that mindset and just like experience what it is in the moment, no matter what the plans are, and just like let go of any like preconceptions I have about myself or what it needs to turn out into.
Where was the gig? The international gig?
Grolschfest. I can't believe I just picked that name out. I'm so bad at names.
That's great.
Grolschfest, it was in Germany.
Okay.
I don't remember the town's name, but yeah.
And now,
oh my gosh, I do. Schopingen.
Okay. Cool.
That's 2 for 2.
So Europe is next.
I would like to.
Yeah. Like
that would be
10 gigs or more or less, or
I mean, that one was only one, and it was great. I had
Okay.
a great time.
Okay.
I mean, I'll take what I can get.
Yeah,
you know?
fair enough.
But you know, I am so proud to be part of the Kansas City jazz scene.
I love that.
That in a lot of ways, like I'm very invested in that, and I hope to like honor that role and to work harder to become a better player and like deserve that like ability to be in this scene.
Cool.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You're given the ability to have lunch with anyone you're choosing, dead or alive. Who are you choosing and why?
Bro. I want to hang out with Herbie.
Okay. Man, I almost put a Herbie record over there for today's episode. I only have one, but he...
I read his book, Possibilities.
Okay.
And he just seems really cool.
Yeah.
And he's like just a powerhouse of knowledge. But he's not just that. He seems like a very cool person.
Early 80s, we wind up in Atlanta, and it's like a 3-year window. It's the only time in my life that we had cable. but it was like right when MTV was exploding, and so Rocket. Do you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
video with the
Yep.
and then fast forward to like
That's
1997.
like the claymation one, right? That like.
No, but there's like mannequin-y and
Oh
sort of.
yeah, yeah. This is
Frm.
still. I still think this. So I think those were the French filmmakers, because he was getting into synthesizers and film at some
Okay,
point.
okay,
And one of the takeaways from his book is like, don't be closed-minded to things.
dude.
Say yes to change and like possibility. That's why
So,
it's named Possibility.
for all these years, I'm like, not mindfully, just rolling around up there somewhere. Herbie Hancock is kind of a one-hit wonder. And then in like 1997, I'm in college, and like the dude that I'm living with, we have a problem. We're spending so much money on music. Like every Saturday we're out just $100 a piece. But anyway, I discover Cantaloupe and Watermelon Man, and I was like, wait, what? This is the same dude? And so like I'm kind of immersed in that little pocket. And then it was even later where I was like, he also played with Miles, like
Yep.
what hasn't it?
And Wayne,
Wayne.
shorter.
Okay.
Yeah, him and Wayne are like best friends.
The book is good stuff, though.
It is,
He
yeah.
seems like a cool
And
dude.
actually, it's interesting that you bring up like Cantaloupe Island, because that era of like funky, like feel good jazz, which is also really heady and cool. Like it
Yeah.
has both. It has things for the
Yes.
nerds. It also has things for people that don't quite understand everything
Right.
that might be happening in
Yeah.
a jazz recording. Before that, he had been in like heady jazz. That was his thing. Things in like 11 and 7 and just like very, very dense kind of like academic almost sounding jazz. But then his label had him perform at a concert, and it also had the Pointer Sisters.
Cool.
And they played, and everyone was like, yeah, all right, they're good. But then the Pointer Sisters played, and the room went wild.
Of course.
And they were dancing, and he was just like, I want to connect with people like that. Why don't I? Why am I doing this? Is this about me? Is this about people?
Huh.
And he had this like revelation.
Cool.
And he was like, I want to connect with people. Like,
I love that.
I'm making art. Like,
Yeah.
why am I doing this just to do it?
Yeah.
Like, and that was kind of the Pointer Sisters is why we even have.
Wow. I'm not sure how many people I've asked that question to. I know I've gotten a lot of good answers, but I think Herbie Hancock might be my favorite so far. So
He's a cool guy.
yeah. You're given the ability to visit your past self, any age you're choosing. What age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
I'm choosing the end of middle school.
Okay.
Hot take. I'm saying give up high school sports.
No shit. Okay.
Or play one, not 3 seasons of them. There's other things to life. Go out there, figure out who you are a little bit
That's great.
sooner.
I love that.
Explore the arts, even though they're not like everywhere in your life. They are life. They are
Yeah.
an echo of life.
Yeah.
And I wish I had discovered that just like a little bit sooner. I also wish I had, I mean, this is like, I teach a little bit now, but I wish I had spent more time on my fundamentals when I was in high school,
okay.
like playing my scales, understanding like different chord progressions, beginning that journey,
Sure.
having
Yeah.
a more well-rounded, like why wasn't I in band and sports, like just like be a little bit more open to the possibilities of life at a younger age. That's
sure.
what I would have said.
For sure. Complete this for me, please. The world would immediately become a better place in which to live if only.
For my own personal philosophy, and I don't know if this would work for everybody. I could never speak on that. I think acceptance is like key to happiness and to understanding the world around us. I think if we had more acceptance in our hearts, and people are like, you mean tolerance? And I don't. I mean acceptance. Acceptance is much more difficult. Truly accepting somebody that like really like they wouldn't accept you.
Yeah.
Can you do that? And if you challenge yourself in that way, if everybody did.
That's beautiful. Really. And and going sort of like that Skol record a million places with it right now, and one of them is victim-y kind of when it comes to circumstances. Like, it's not fair or whatever.
Right.
Like, acceptance is that internally, but it's also, other people, to some degree, the way things are. I mean, it's definitely a multi-layered thing.
Yeah, it's tough.
But beautiful answer. So, are you old enough to remember that there was at one time a television show called Fear Factor?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what this show was?
Not really. We didn't have cable growing up, but I
Okay.
remember that's a name.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't ever really watch it, but I know that it was Joe Rogan hosted it. It was like a reality TV show in the early where they try to just get. I think all of the challenges are like acmes of heebie-jeebies, like the worst possible. Like lay in this coffin with 4,700 spiders and. That's one example, but there's a million others. So what would be the absolute worst Fear Factor challenge for Jackie Myers?
Fear Factor challenge. What am I afraid of? Let's see. I don't.
Sometimes folks find themselves in this pickle, and where I always go, if you've seen Kill Bill, there's a scene where Uma Thurman gets like chloroformed or something and then wakes up in a coffin and is fucking buried alive. Like
Yeah,
I
that's a
wouldn't,
bad one.
or that, whatever that submarine tour thing that went.
Oh God.
And like, insane. I would completely lose it. Like,
Yeah.
as opposed to like having some snakes lay on me for 3 minutes,
Yeah. The problem is a little bit that like sometimes being pretty afraid is pretty fun.
What?
It's why people like roller coasters. Like,
Okay.
I am like pretty afraid of heights, and not terribly. Like I've gone up on my roof before,
Sure.
but I don't like them.
Okay.
But I really enjoy those things where they like put you in those seats and they shoot you up into the air and then they just drop you and you feel like you're going to die for a second. Sometimes I think that feeling of thinking that you're going to die for a second allows you to have this momentary perspective where you sort of like get out of your head and
Sure.
you don't have that giant mirror right here where you can only
Yes.
see yourself.
Yeah.
So I think fear is kind of pretty important in putting yourself in situations once in a while where you
killing
can feel that.
Killing these. I love it. Well, that's it. Jackie Myers Music on Facebook, Instagram, JackieMyersMusic.com. There's a Bandcamp. Your 7 albums and a couple of singles are in all the places, but you just gotta look and find them.
There's this website called Google. It can help you.
Okay.
It will
So
find
if I plugged in Jackie Myers discography into this website you call Google, would it show me?
Probably show you something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your
thanks for having
time.
me. This was
and
fun, Blair.
Thanks. I wish you the best tonight and moving forward.
Okay. Thank
Talk to
you.
soon.